Good morning to you. This is Talk Breakfast with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Thank you very much indeed for your company. Right now, let me introduce you to the founder of Standing for Women, women's and girls' rights activist, Kellie-Jay Keen, who joins us. Good morning to you, Kellie-Jay.
Good morning.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. You are back in the UK, having had to, well, let's be honest, flee New Zealand over the weekend after you were attacked by trans activists at one of your many protests that you've been holding, not just in New Zealand, in Australia, indeed around the world in recent months and years. Extraordinary event. Home Office Minister Chris Philp has in the last few moments condemned what happened to you. But let's just go back a little bit for people who don't know what your activism is about, what Standing for Women, your organisation, is about. What is the purpose of the tours that you do and the purpose of your organisation?
So quite a while ago, 2015, I discovered that we weren't allowed to talk about women anymore, and women's issues in particular, women's spaces, women's rights, etc. And so I realised that right at the centre of that is the word woman. And so I started a campaign to ensure we kept using it in place of things like birthing persons, menstruators, cervix havers, and so on, which is something that back in 2015 seemed like just preposterous that would happen. And here we are now in 2023. So what we then found is that women, when we tried to talk about this online, we were kicked off platforms. I won't waste time in naming all the platforms I've been kicked off of, but Twitter I was prevented from using for 5 years. So we decided to go back into the public square. We've been doing these events since about 2019 in Hyde Park, and then we stretched them to the rest of the UK and now the world. And it simply is about creating a space in which women can talk about the things that they are desperate to talk about because they feel isolated and gaslit by the state.
Yeah, indeed. Again, you were the person who printed the woman, adult, human, female dictionary definition of woman on T-shirts after you put it on the side of a building at the Labour Party conference in Liverpool, and it was taken down because apparently it offended people, even though it was a statement of fact. I've proudly worn your T-shirts out and about and still do. And I have to say, you're wearing a T-shirt right now, for those who are listening, not watching, saying woman. It's not a dirty word and it has a meaning. Most of us know what it means. You've been called anti-trans activist. Indeed, The Guardian and the BBC both referred to you as that over the weekend. When you got attacked by trans activists. Now, you're not anti-trans, you're pro-women and girls, aren't you? I'm not entirely sure that the trans activists are pro-trans, even though it was. Talk us through, I mean, you had problems in Australia as well with some violence, protests and intimidatory behaviour. Talk us through what happened in New Zealand. We've got some footage of you being attacked with, I mean, really quite aggressive activists, but also a can of soup being thrown over you. Bearing in mind, you're about 5 foot. I mean, you're tiny, aren't you? You're a 5 foot woman.
Yes.
And you're speaking. You're not attacking anybody. You're not hurting anybody. You're just speaking with your microphone. So talk us through what actually happened to you.
Well, just very briefly, up until that point, there was a High Court case trying to ban me from the country. So it was all high stakes before I'd even got there. And some politicians, and in fact, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, had sort of cast aspersions on my character prior to me entering the country. So then by the time I got there, I checked into a hotel. It was 2 hours in immigration for interrogation. Then I got a threatening letter under the door of my hotel. So by the time I got to the event, there were 2,000, there was a mob of 2,000. And now these people would call themselves trans activists. I think both you and I would agree that probably they're just women hating over and above any rights that they're actually standing up for, whether I agree with that or not. And I got in the middle of it and they were shouting like that they wanted to kill me. And there were some really brave women. There was a 70-year-old woman that got punched in the face twice by a man, like full on in the face. It was horrifying. And the security that I'd had to hire at the cost of $10,000 to try and protect me and other women, they just said, look, it's not safe. The police aren't coming. We can't keep you safe here. And the mob was coming in. And I had to get out. And so they just formed a little circle around me. And as I'm leaving, they tried to push me to the ground with a lady called Tanya who was helping sort of keep me up. And I just thought at that point, if I don't get up, that's it. That's it. I won't see my kids again. I won't see my husband again. Game over. They will stomp me to death. So
I mean, clearly, absolutely terrifying. And we've got pictures we've shown of you still defiantly filming the mob as you're covered in this tomato sauce. Now you're, say, a very diminutive woman. You sort of passing resemblance, I have to say, to Marilyn Monroe. Wouldn't have escaped everyone's notice. But I mean, you have a spine of steel and a stomach of steel. I'm in awe of what you do and your defiance to refuse. The more they shout you down, the more you say, well, I will not be silenced. I can hear, and I'm sure all my audience can, the quiver in your voice. You were genuinely fearing for your life in New Zealand.
Yeah, I really, really, really was. I just, in those moments, everything sort of slows a little bit. And you can have a full conversation with yourself where you're like, okay, all right, well, this is it, and I've got to get back up. And my security, I think, saved my life. This guy, there's pictures of a hand around my neck, and that is the security saying that he knew that if I totally hit the floor, you become not a human anymore. It's not like someone punching in the face. If you're a body on the floor, the police agreed. Every police officer I've talked to agreed in New Zealand. That I was lucky to be alive. It's just, and then I had to go into police protection until I came home.
And I mean, which is absolutely extraordinary, because we are talking about, one of our closest sort of, democratic allies, and they were refusing to guarantee your safety. And the message you were spreading was, well, I mean, the way some of it's being reported, to say an anti-trans activist. You've been called a Nazi. You've been called the C word by, it a New Zealand senator?
In Parliament. In
Parliament, using rhyming slang. I mean, just extraordinary language. And there have been chants here, the only good Nazi is a dead Nazi. Some claims. Yeah. You have had some protests where some far-right activists and self-propelled Nazis have come along as well. Nothing to do with what your protest is about. Yeah. But this has been used as a very good excuse to try and tar you with far-right, Nazi, dangerous yourself. What do you say to those accusations?
Well, there's not an incident where actually any of those men have turned up to my event. They turned up to sort of multiple events. There were 6 different groups in Melbourne, which is where that occurred. And there's something very fishy going on, that we never get the chance as a group. The Women Talking didn't get a chance as a group to actually respond to those men at that time. Like, all the photographs just happened to have those men somewhere else doing the Nazi salute. So I think this is just another weapon against us to try and stop women talking from just saying, can we just have women-only spaces? Yeah. Like, that's what we want. We just don't want men in women's spaces, please.
And what's interesting, of course, is watching those large men, much bigger than a lot of the women like you who were there speaking. That's all you were doing, talking about women's and girls' rights in an open space, legally. Large men, many of them wearing masks over their faces. I bet they're not masked on when they're on the train. Very intimidating, very aggressive, very up close, and in this case, actually, assaulting you. The police not stepping in. This is really bizarre. I'm not quite sure why people think that women would want these men in their safe spaces.
Yeah, isn't it amazing? We're saying, look, can we just keep men out of their spaces? And they're saying, look, we're being very kind. We're a kind group of people just demanding, shouting in your face with threats of violence, that we really do want to come in and share your space. We don't know what you're talking about, ladies. So it's it couldn't be more perfect. And part of the reason I do these tours and we film them is we know that there'll be some men, groups of people that are very, very angry about women speaking, and they will do anything to stop us. And I think now is the time for all women and anybody who cares about the truth to start standing up and coming out and saying, no, we will not tolerate this. This is a terrorist kind of organisation trying to terrorise us into silence.
And indeed not representing. There's no reason to think that these people represent the majority of trans people just trying to live their lives perfectly peacefully and happily. We've seen in Hyde Park this weekend, and again, I know you've done, as you mentioned earlier, a lot of these protests in Hyde Park at Speaker's Corner, where you're supposed to go and do these things. And we saw at the weekend some film taken by another wonderful women's ally, Graham Linehan, taking video of, again, a mob of men surrounding and shouting down, angrily shouting down, intimidating women, exercising their legal right to free speech at Speaker's Corner in Hyde Park, and the police not interjecting, not intervening, and walking away. There's a video of them walking away while women are being intimidated. Why do you think that's happening?
I get to a point where I just think the only credible answer is that they don't care about women. Maybe they want to deter us. Maybe the police are thinking, well, we don't want this every week, so we're not going to bother. Perhaps if we all came in West Ham and Chelsea strips, maybe, and demanded large paychecks, maybe they protect us. I just think men going to football matches have a huge police presence, and women going and trying to speak out about our rights just get left behind. It's disgusting.
Is what happened to you in New Zealand, is what's happening at Hyde Park Corner, all of these attempts to shut you down on social media, like, is that going to stop you?
No, you've got a daughter, as have I, and I cannot allow this horrible mob to take over and just obliterate all of her rights to female space. It's just not going to happen. And I think more and more women are so angry now, and they know about it. You know, New Zealand's been trending ever since it happened. Posie Parker's trended.
That's your online name, so people don't know.
Yeah, sorry. Which was picked up again in Australia. Like, I'd been using Kellie-Jay Keen for quite some time, but all of these things now, people are no longer asleep to this. So what that mob did on Saturday, whilst I really do fear for women in New Zealand, I think it's just so frightening. But what that mob did is they awakened the sleeping giant, and the minority, or the majority rather, is no longer silent.
Absolutely. I salute you. I think you're an amazing, amazing warrior. Thank you very much, and I'm glad you're safe and back home. It's coming up to 9:32. Kellie-Jay Keen, founder of Standing for Women, thank you for joining us. This is Talk Breakfast.